Hey guys, I've got some new artwork for you today. This one's a study that I did. I've spent a few hours on this, and I just want to go through my process and my thoughts like I usually do, and kind of what I hope to learn from doing these kind of studies, and how I'm using the reference, what I'm choosing to omit and what I'm choosing to include, and just overall what my focus is when I'm doing this kind of thing. So please remember to subscribe if you like what I do and if you're not already. And as usual, thank you so much for all your support, your feedback, liking and subscribing to the channel. And yeah, I hope you guys like this one. Let's go. So I'm just going to start with a really loose line drawing to get the overall composition and design of the image ready to advance to the next stage. By the way, that was Anghus, you guys met in the intro, and he's got a surprise for you guys if you stay till the end of the video, so make sure to do that. Once things are really kind of solid and I can see where the image is going, then I'll move to my next step, which is usually this planning of overall light and dark shapes. And if you've seen some of my recent videos, you know that this is what I consider the most important step of the image, and making sure that the composition is successful. Now that I've got those overall light and dark areas set up, I'm moving to kind of like a value sketch stage where I'm going to start identifying what values I want to go where, and I want to maintain the overall structure of the light and dark sketch that I did. I like the fact that in the reference, the castle is a much lighter value than the trees behind it. So that was in my mind when I did the original two-tone sketch, and I'm still thinking about that now. Now here I'm going to start establishing the color palette of the image, and this is my very typical routine for doing this, using gradient maps. So I've slowed this part of the video down so you can kind of really see what I'm doing, and maybe you guys can try it out for yourselves. But I'm basically going to create several gradient maps and just mask different areas for colorizing different things in the image. I'm working on very simple layer setups. I think there's 3 layers in this image: the foreground with the castle, the trees behind it, and then the sky behind those. So I'm using gradient maps and laying in a very rough kind of color base just to get me started, and then I'll start painting directly on top of that once I'm happy with where it is. In terms of what I'm using from the references and why I've brought in 2 other references in addition to the castle is I like the castle in the first reference, but I just wanted to change the colors a bit and make it a little bit more interesting, and so I took these other references with some more warm green tones, and I want to have that be really present in the foreground and the grass. And there's no particular reason, I just wanted to try having these warmer tones in the foreground because I really love that bottom left reference and how warm the grass feels. And I'll also take inspiration from those kind of wild flowers in the grass, and you'll see those come in later. The whole time I'm doing these, the whole time I'm setting up the colors, I'm also making sure that I maintain the overall value structure. And I don't want to change the actual composition or the structure of the image. I just want to do things one step at a time. I've already established how I want the values and the light and dark shapes. So now I want to add color to the image, but maintain that structure and make sure that I'm following my plan on every step and not kind of veering off and getting sidetracked, and then you can lose sight of your original vision, and then you might just spend forever trying to figure out the image because you don't have a plan anymore. This is kind of where the image can have like an ugly phase, because your first kind of actual brush strokes that aren't just using color adjustments can look a little bit jarring on top of your gradient maps and your sketch below. So you got to kind of trust in the process that you'll arrive at the right result, and you just have to kind of power through this ugly phase of the image. I find it really helps to really exaggerate how far I zoom out when I'm making these, when I'm laying down these colors, because it really makes sure that I use a broad brush and I'm trying to express as much information as possible with broad strokes. In terms of the design and what I'm actually using from the references, it's important when you're doing studies, I think, to have a focus and don't try and do everything at once. So my focus for this was more about the painterly quality and the colors and the mood, and I didn't want to spend too much energy designing something and worrying about, you know, having a really cool castle design. That's why I have this castle reference that I'm following pretty closely. You can see that I've exaggerated proportions and I've changed certain things just to suit my own tastes and kind of just for fun to change it up a little bit. But I'm not really doing any intense designing, so all of my focus can just be on getting the brushstrokes right and creating the mood that I want. I find it can be much more consistent about studying if I just choose to focus on one or two things per study. And practicing those things individually, I think, eventually sharpens all those tools. And then when you're actually working on a portfolio piece or a finished illustration, then you can kind of take all you've learned from all those different aspects and take the time to really bring them together to make one really cool image that kind of checks all those boxes. Doing studies like these always reinforces their importance to me. It's so important to understand how things are in reality and use those details to inform our concepts and our illustrations. What I'm hoping to show with this study in particular is that it doesn't have to be boring, kind of mundane, just one-to-one copying of a reference. You can change things as you see fit or to suit your own style or your own sensibilities. I actually love doing studies because it relieves the pressure of having to come up with ideas, and that can make the whole process much more enjoyable. In doing the process, you might just gain ideas for your next concept, and so everything kind of snowballs together in that regard. It's really relaxing just being able to paint without having to come up with a crazy idea or a crazy concept. You can just look at a photo, there's your idea, and you can emphasize the aspects of that image that appeal to you. You see me mess around with the foreground and the grass a lot because I really wasn't happy with how kind of noisy and messy everything was feeling there. So I end up just simplifying and creating broad shapes with the grass and zooming out again and really focusing on the graphic read of that area. And as soon as I covered that in grass, it really felt way better to me. And I do reintroduce the wildflowers, but it's still maintaining that overall read in the foreground and the strong graphic shapes of the mossy rocks, and not letting the flowers clump together too much and create too much noise. So I'm always going back to that simple read and making sure that I stay to that initial simple structure that I had, and I don't want to get caught up in creating too much noise and details everywhere, because then you can lose the flow and the graphic read of your initial sketch. A nice little trick you guys can do is when you're done an image, you can go to the color lookup tables. They're in the adjustment layers, and you can just flick through those and see if some of them strengthen your image. It's kind of like an Instagram filter, and you can just flick through them and see how they affect the colors and the values in your image. And in this case, I found one that I really liked, and it kind of gave this nice unifying color pass to my image, and it kind of brought everything together. And as soon as I landed on it, I decided to stick with it, and I just adjusted the opacity a little bit so it's not too strong, so it's not changing my values too much. And then I just do a level adjustment afterwards to make sure that the values aren't too crunched, because some of them can really flatten the values, and I want to make sure that it doesn't look like there's a filter over it, but sometimes it can really just give that last unifying subtle color pass to your image. So I recommend trying those out as a very end stage of your image. One little tip I can give you guys that I've found really helps over time is when you think an image is finished, just sleep on it. If it's just a personal piece, just let it sit and sleep on it, and don't officially call it done or post it or anything. And then the next day, just come back and look at it and reassess if there's anything glaring that isn't working for you, or that you find distracting or not as good as it could be. In my case, for this image, I thought it was done and I saved it, and then I went and had lunch, and then I came back and I was really not happy with how the tower of the castle was looking. And I couldn't, while I was working on it, I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was necessarily, and I couldn't find the right solution. After lunch, I came back with fresh eyes, and I just looked broadly at the image, and the solution just came to me really easily. I should just bring some of that vegetation and overgrowth from the middle of the castle and have it sprouting out the tower a little bit. And that just seemed like such an obvious solution to me, but I needed to let the image rest and walk away for a little bit to see it objectively when I came back and to actually have that solution. Because sometimes if you've been working on something for several hours, you can kind of get fatigued on it and you lose objectivity, and you get this kind of brain fog and cloudiness, and it's hard to come up with solutions that might be very simple and just require you to rest your eyes for a bit. So that's it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, remember to like and continue to give me feedback. And if you like the channel, please subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.